good news. Yesterday, we saw Nigeria's GDP went up 3.19% for the second quarter. That's a rise from 2.98%. There you have it. And the president has been elated about this. I'm sure the central bank and all other government arms would have a lot of statements to do about this. So for the second quarter of July, we see that it's 3.19%. We look at the sectors that drove this. We saw the services sector led the growth by 59% to the economy. There you have it. So there you have the oil sector added 5.70. For the non-oil, we see major contribution from there. Services, 58.76%. Agriculture, 22.61%. Industries added 18.62%. So you notice there that services and agriculture are the major drivers. Industries follows. And we know that even from the CBN business survey, a lot of eyes are looking the way of agriculture, to be able to drive that. But the threat of insecurity, obviously, is a big one for that sector. Now, let's talk about this now and see how sustainable this is with Mr. Ayodele. Mr. Ayodele is the Managing Director of Optimus by AfriInvest. Mr. Abel, good morning and thank you for your time.
Yeah, good morning, and thanks for having me.
All right, so, a lot of reactions have been following these numbers. They look impressive, at least compared to where we're coming from. But some people have said it doesn't really capture our reality. I don't know what your findings have been, if these numbers actually capture our reality as it is now.
Okay, thanks. So I think that when we look at it beyond the numbers, that's when we can begin to see there's what we call inclusive growth. So is it inclusive, which means that when you look at the standard of living, you look at the income distribution, which is very important. So it's good that, yes, we're achieving the positive growth rate. And we also want to look at what are those sectors that are contributing. So you spoke about, when you look at the report, the services sector is contributing more. But this sector, when we look at it vis-a-vis ability to employ, while it's doing very well, especially the telecommunications sector. So you look at the half-year result of like MTN Nigeria, Airtel Africa, you would also be able to affirm that this sector is doing well. So in the first half of the year, you see MTN already made about 1.5 trillion naira and over 55% from data. So you would that alluded to the fact that the service sector is supporting. Beyond that, also from the perspective of also the financial sector, they are also doing very well. But these sectors have their limitation in terms of employment. And if we want to have inclusive growth, improved standard of living, these are some of the things that we also need to begin to look out for beyond achieving a positive growth, beyond achieving a growth that is better than the previous quarter.
Okay, so we saw that services, agriculture contributed majorly to this. In fact, the non-oil sector contributed more than 94% of it. Is this a seasonal growth? Is it sustainable from your perspective?
Okay, thanks. I think sustainability will depend on policy that we use to drive this. The first thing we need to note is that when you look at the agri sector, which is crop production, ranked number one on that list, about 20% contribution. Q2 is the harvest, the planting season. So you would also expect that there will be improvements in planting within that space. But if you also look at data around the ability for us to cultivate, so insecurity in some of those major food producing areas is still very prominent. And as such, it means that we would have achieved more if not for the insecurity. So I think that as we curtail insecurity, there's sustainability. We can also grow better when you look at the crop sector. crop production sector. The trade sector too, despite a bit of the volatility within the FX environment, you would see the rate at which custom on a daily basis change their rates to reflect the NAFEM rates. That affects business projection, but the businesses are they're able to weather the storm within that space. But what we would see to ensure sustainability is that there needs to be like a renewed approach to see how, especially like the custom rate that has to do with trade, people importing and exporting, to be able to project. That is also really very, very important. The telecom sector, price has been frozen for a while within that space. What's the probability or what's the roadmap to ensure that the businesses within that space don't also begin to suffer based on the price freeze? So these are some of the things that would ensure and that would sustainability. Inclusive growth is really critical. Creating that enabling environment, infrastructure. These are some of the boosters that I think that if we do this, there's nothing stopping us from growing at 5% per year if we're able to put in those things in place.
Okay, so I think the other issue would be real growth. Beyond the numbers, how much of this is reflecting in the purchasing power and welfare of Nigerians, and how do we translate the numbers to real growth in the life and operations and purchasing power of the people?
Okay, thanks. That's why I said that inclusive growth has to do with income distribution. So is it evenly distributed, which is no. So, and that is why that is part of what we need to also work on. Yes, the economy is growing, but how many Nigerians are actually benefiting from this? Inflation rate at 33.4%, which is really very high. So when you talk in terms of purchasing power, that is really being affected. Customers' wallet continue to be constrained. So there's a need to see how that level playing ground, that infrastructure. So if most things you look at developed clients, when businesses set up, there are some things they don't bother about because there's already a structure on ground, a good road, there's power, you don't have to provide that. So that would boost activities within that space and enable the average Nigerian to also be able to increase the ability to earn. So I totally agree that regarding distribution, that there's still a lot that has to be do with that, so that as we try to grow, is evenly distributed. So it's not just a few people that are accounting for the major activity, major boost that we are doing. So I think lastly, how to also trace that is some of those sectors that would impact across the country are not growing as expected. So you see the telecoms carrying the day. How many staff can they employ? Even if they expand today, it's limited. But you look at the agri sector, you look at the manufacturing sector, these are the sectors that the SMEs operating that needs the support. So that needs the growth that would evenly be distributed across the country.
All right. So do you see this by the end of third quarter? Do you see building on this? Do you see a retraction?
No, I think that we should be able to sustain at least the 3% levels. But like I mentioned earlier, for us to have that inclusive growth, we need to be able to grow at a level of between 5 to 7%. That will begin and look at the critical sectors that can create jobs. The agri sector, the manufacturing sector, the trade sector. These are those sectors that would have more impact on the economy beyond the services sector that has been the major support.
All right, Mr. Ayodele, thank you so much for your time and your views this morning. Managing Director, Optimus by AfriInvest.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
You too. Let's take a break now. When we come back, we're staying on this and also see what commodities prices are doing. That's after the break. Just stay with us.